saying that all roads lead to Rome, and it's quite true in this case. This is all about the foundation of Rome and its growth into an empire. This is about how Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, eventually created the first city of Rome. This is how the first city of Rome grew into becoming a powerful nation, and how that nation ended up growing into becoming an empire. Romulus and Remus are the founders of Rome, and Romulus specifically is the true founder of Rome. And they were first born from Rhea, and who is to be believed the god of war, Mars. They were also the nephews of Amulus, who sentenced them to death because of their birth, due to the fact that he believed that they would overthrow him later on. The servant who was meant to throw them in the Tiber River eventually actually gave pity to them and just put them down and let them flow down the river in a trout. They were eventually saved by a she-wolf called Lupa and a woodpecker. They were fed and saved by them before they were taken away by humans. Those two animals are believed to be sacred to the war god Mars. Later on they were raised by Faustulus and Aca Laurentia, and eventually Remus was actually kidnapped by Amulus's men, and so Romulus decided to make a group and save his brother. They eventually were capable of killing Amulus and saving his brother Remus, and that allowed them to bring their grandfather Nimetor into the throne. And many years later, they decided to create their own city in honor of Lupa, who saved their lives. They fought over where to create the city, and eventually Remus decided to mock his brother Romulus by jumping over the wall which he created, and this caused Romulus to kill his brother. Romulus eventually grew into power in his city by bringing in exiles and fugitives from the Sabians, who he believed would seize his city if he did not. Romulus and Titus Tatius, who was the ruler of the Sabines, decided to become co-rulers of Rome after they had a treaty. Titus eventually died due to mysterious circumstances, and Romulus became the sole ruler yet again. Romulus eventually disappeared during a storm, and his people believed that he became the god Quirinus. Rome wasn't always the strong empire that it used to be. Rome was first founded in April 21st, 753 BC. It was the first city was built on Palatine Hill because it was where Lupa saved Romulus and Remus, and because it was a very easy place to defend against. There were only 7 kings during the time of the first city, and it was from Romulus all the way to Tarquin. They eventually grew into power through trading with merchants, and they were able to quickly grow into power through that way because of the accessible waterways that they had. And because of this, they were capable of finding out the cultures and capabilities of other nations, and this allowed them to borrow and improve the skills that they found about of. They also had their culture quickly grow because of their information, and they modeled the Greeks and how to grow their culture because of the vast myriad of their culture. They also borrowed the literacy, religion, and the fundamentals of architecture from the Greeks. However, they borrowed their ways of trade and their ways of building urban luxury from the Etruscans. This led to a great impact on how Rome grew later on in its life, and that eventually led to how Rome was forever was. Rome grew due to their consistent state of war and their great expansion. Their first big war was against Carthage, which was also known as the Punic Wars. That war against them allowed them to consolidate their power and wealth and prestige, and let them become a true superpower in their time. However, due to their consistent growth, this allowed greed, corruption, and an over-dependence on slave labor to seep into their empire. However, because Tiberius and Gaius, who were famous soldiers during that time period, sought to reform their country against such corruption, and eventually they did solve it and led to the flourishing of the nation. However, they died by then due to their actions. Because of this, eventually Rome had divided into two different social classes known as the optimates and the populares. The optimates were known as the optimal men, and the populares were known as the people. This they weren't separated into how much money they made or what they were capable of. They were rather separated on their ideology. And eventually, out of those people, Croesus, Pompey, and Caesar created the first triumvirate and became the rulers of Rome. However, Croesus ended up dying because he decided the prestige that Pompey and Caesar had due to their situation as being generals. He died during his war with the Parthians during a failed peace treaty. Afterwards, Pompey and Caesar went to war against one another due to their differences, and eventually Caesar beat Pompey, and Pompey fled to Egypt. However, he was mysteriously assassinated. This led to Caesar becoming the dictator of Rome and the strongest person in the nation. However, he was eventually assassinated by the Senate due to the fact that they were worried that with his growing popularity and power, he would decide to get rid of the Senate and become the sole power of Rome. Afterwards, a few of his close associates that initiated the assassination, Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus, all decided to become the second triumvirate. They ended up dividing the land into thirds between one another, and however, Lepidus was quickly shot out for becoming a stronger power because he was given lands that wouldn't allow him to consolidate and grow in strength. And eventually they went to war with one another because of Antony's connection to Egypt and Cleopatra. Afterwards, Octavian ended up defeating Antony and becoming the sole ruler of Rome. He changed his name in honor of that, becoming Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, and this led to the beginning of the Empire of Rome. We learned about Romulus, who is the founder of Rome, how the city of Rome ended up growing into a nation and a superpower in its own right, and how the political intricacies and conflicts within the city allowed them to grow into the mighty empire which they were. In the end, this is just the beginning of Rome's long and vast history.